Hello everybody, you're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rye Zone for some short stories and or some poetry. We catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review, and we play local, unsigned and or independent music. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeat on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. You can also email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. I'd love to hear from any creatives, musicians, poets, performers, people who'd like to appear on the show, people who have MP3s they'd like to share. Do get in touch. So this week we're going to be chatting to writer and musician Pae Veo, but before we do that, we are going to head over to the Rye Zone for the latest instalment of Insomniac, which is a novella by myself, Dane Cobain. Let's get straight to it.
Week 2, Day 3. Kate had been called into a meeting. Present were Kate, Mr. Murray, a man called Evans who was a line manager, and the CEO of the company, a stern-faced old hag who'd sacrificed every scrap of passion in her rise to the top of one of the most successful financial companies in the West Midlands. Her name was Rita Hawking, and she had a face like a dehydrated lemon. Kate wasn't happy to see her. "I've called this meeting to give you a formal warning," Mr. Murray said, by way of greeting. "I can't pretend that we haven't noticed a drop in your performance." "I can't sleep," Kate insisted. "So see a doctor," Murray replied. He looked across at his two colleagues for confirmation. While neither of them nodded, their lack of protest confirmed that he was within his remit. "Listen, we can't afford to carry dead weight here. We hired you to fulfill a role. If you're unable to do that, we'll have to find someone else." Kate bit her tongue, not to stop herself from speaking, but to bite back her tears and to remind herself that she was real. The last few weeks had passed in a blur of insomnia, and the days were starting to stretch and blend and to become one and the same. She wasn't much of a dreamer, but her dreams of late had been so vivid that she'd felt like she was really there, and her head ached more than anyone's head should ever ache. "Kate," Evans said, not unkindly, "look, I'm not trying to be malicious. We care about you, and we'd hate to lose you. But we also have metrics, policies and processes. If you can't hack it, we have grounds for dismissal. We'd love to keep you, Kate, but if you can't do the job..." "I can do it," she insisted. "Just give me some more time." "We'll give you time," Hawking said, earning her surname by leaning forward like a bird of prey. "But you're on thin ice, Kate. I don't want to see you in a meeting like this again." "You won't," Kate said. She shook their hands and took her leave, then slipped surreptitiously out of the office to get some fresh air. She walked to the community garden and hid among the rose bushes. Then she screamed and screamed and screamed. When she got back to the office, Evans took her aside. "What was all that about?" he asked. "What was all what about?" Kate replied. For a split second she was struck by the thought that Evans could have followed her to the garden and overheard her outburst, but that was crazy. Still, the thought kept on bouncing around her head like an unwelcome guest she couldn't get rid of. "You know what I'm talking about," Evans said. "I'm worried about you, Kate. What happened?" "I can't sleep," she said. "That's it?" "You try it," Kate growled. "Then we'll see how you're feeling after a week or two." Evans crossed his arms and looked her up and down appraisingly. "Are you still going to make the meeting on Monday?" "Which meeting?" "The one with Sunnyvale," Evans said. "You know, the super important meeting with a potential client that could deliver a third of our revenue. You're supposed to be presenting." "Oh," Kate said. "Yeah, that meeting." Evans looked at her again. "You'd forgotten, hadn't you?" "Yeah," Kate admitted. "Sorry, boss, but don't worry about it. I'm good to present." "You sure about that?" "I'm sure," Kate said. Evans looked unimpressed, but she summoned up a smile, and that seemed to do the trick. He said. "You'd better be. It's not just your ass on the line." Week 3, Day 1. It was the day of the meeting, and Kate was exhausted. No surprises there. She'd tried a bunch of stuff from over the counter, but her sleep had been worse than ever. Then she'd gone for an emergency appointment with her doctor, who'd begrudgingly written out a script for some sleeping medication, though he'd also warned her not to get too attached to them. Not that there seemed like much chance of her getting hooked. The damn things didn't work. She'd slept well on Friday night, but then she'd woken early on Saturday morning and found herself unable to drift off back to sleep. It messed with her schedule and threw her plans into chaos, but her plans had been chaotic for the last 2 weeks. It was starting to get to her. But it was the day of the meeting, and Kate could feel the anxiety rising in her chest like a hot air balloon until it filled her lungs and made it difficult to breathe. She knew it was going to be one of those days from the moment she woke up. She'd taken the best part of 3 hours to fall asleep the night before and then slept through her alarm, which threw her and her routine into chaos. It all went downhill from there. She made it to work on time, but only just, and then she hightailed it to her desk to print off some paperwork. It was one of those awful meetings that started at 9 AM on a Monday morning when everyone was still thinking about the weekend. The rest of the company was still having its weekly kickoff when Kate and the team sashayed into the meeting room. Sunnyvale's representatives were already in there, chatting to the managing director and giving their drink orders to Jill in reception. It was Kate's least favourite part of the meeting, the part where she had to make small talk with people that she didn't like and had nothing in common with. But it was a part of the job, like it was a part of almost every job, so she bit her tongue and forced herself to use it. It was 9:25 AM and her heart was racing. The meeting proper started at 9:35, once the formalities were complete and everyone was up to date on each other's cars and kids in that order. Agency life, Kate thought, you can't beat it. But she was just trying to keep her spirits up. Truth be told, for the first time in the last few weeks, Kate didn't feel tired. She felt terrified. Her hands were sweaty. Her pupils were dilated, her veins felt red hot and itched beneath her skin, her heart was racing and her throat was drier than a biscuit in the desert. Her mind was racing at approximately 2,300 miles per hour. She thought for a moment that she was going to vomit, but she managed to swallow it back down. She wondered what was wrong with her, whether she was dying of some obscure disease or whether she was finally losing her mind. She swallowed again, reached for a glass of water and knocked it over. Everyone turned to look at her. "Jesus," Evans said. "Look out, Kate." "I'm sorry," she replied. Her hands were shaking, and she realised with a jolt that they'd been shaking since she'd woken up that morning and pulled back the bed sheets. "I'll get some paper towels." "No need," Evans said. "I'll get Jill to do it." He walked over to the door, opened it and shouted out into the corridor. While this was happening, Kate tried to conceal her embarrassment, knowing all along that it showed in her rosy cheeks. The reps from Sunnyvale, for their part, smiled awkwardly and cracked a few jokes. Jill came into the room with an armful of paper towels, and Evans held the door open until she left. Then he closed it behind him and cleared his throat. "Sorry about that," Evans said. "Where were we?" "Ah, yes. Well, you've given us one show, Kate. Now how about another? I believe you have a few words for us." "Oh," Kate said. "Yeah, one moment." The shock of the spill had taken her mind off the reason why they were gathered there to begin with. She mumbled incoherently as she fiddled with her laptop, trying to hook her slides up to the projector. She spent half the weekend going over the slides, but all of the preparation had been for nothing. Her mind had gone blank. And then she knew nothing. She hit her head on the boardroom table as she fell to the floor. Week 3, Day 2. Kate was exhausted again, and this time she also had a headache. She supposed it was only to be expected after hitting her head on the table. The previous day felt like a nightmare. She'd relived it in all its brutal glory as she cried herself to sleep. One moment she'd been standing in the boardroom with a blank mind and a throbbing heart, and the next she was coming round in the back of an ambulance. She'd asked what happened, and the paramedic told her that she'd fainted. "What happened to the meeting?" she'd asked. But the paramedic just shook his head. Kate looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were sallow, like two sinkholes at night in the soil of her face, and her nose had swelled with grease and blackheads. Her right brow was bruised blue, and an 1.5-inch line of butterfly stitches ran its way across her forehead. The gash had exposed a nerve which the doctors had to kill to numb the pain, leaving her face feeling stretched and taut. When she got home from the hospital, she went straight to the mirror to take a look at herself, but it was worse than she'd feared. She tried styling her hair to cover it, but the bruise had taken over half of her face and she couldn't find a way to make it work. Still, she did the best that she could with her makeup and wore dark glasses behind the wheel of her car. But Grundy plc, the company she worked for, had a conservative dress policy, and she had to take them off the instant she entered the building. She was hoping that nobody would notice, but it was a hopeless hope and she knew it. She made it until approximately 10:15 AM. She had been typing away at her machine with her headphones on, slowly drifting away into a reassuring, realistic world that resembled what she'd come to expect from life. At some point, while she'd been knee-deep in Excel formulae and idly humming a Taylor Swift song, Mr. Murray had dragged a chair over and sat down just behind her, watching her from over her shoulder. When she noticed that he was there, she almost leapt out of her skin. She shrieked and responded on instinct like a cornered animal, throwing her chair back and leaping to her feet. Her chair collided with Mr. Murray, who was driven sideways, and he went tumbling from his own chair, hitting the ground with as much momentum as a middle-aged man could muster. He went down slowly, but he went down hard. "What the hell?" Murray shouted, still lying prone on top of his fallen chair. One of its wheels was spinning comically in the air. A deathly silence had descended upon the office as though the building itself had taken a sudden deep breath. By now, all eyes were on the two of them, and Kate could feel her heartbeat speeding up and another panic attack coming on. She tried to calm herself with the breathing exercises, but then she surprised herself and did something that stopped her from hyperventilating. She burst into tears and made a break for the bathroom. Week 3, Day 5. Evans looked uncomfortable. Look, I'm sorry, he said. This wasn't my idea, but you have to admit that your performance has been slacking and Murray is out for your blood. What did you do to piss him off? Nothing, Kate said truthfully. She sighed. Let's just get this over with. She felt like a condemned prisoner on the way to the gallows. The building had bars on its windows to keep thieves out, but they had the unintended side effect of making the office feel like a prison, especially on grey days like this one where the sun struggled to push its way through the clouds. Evans led the way and opened the door to the meeting room, then pulled out a chair for her to sit down on. He sat to her right. On the other side of the table were the stern, unimpressed faces of Mr. Murray and Rita Hawking. Before we get started, Kate said, seizing the initiative before her buttocks hit the seat, I'd like to apologise. I'm not sure what came over me. Lately I've just been having these dizzy spells and... With the greatest respect, Hawking said, raising her hand for silence. Your health problems aren't my concern. You're here to do a job, Kate. If you're sick and you need time off, for God's sake take time off. But don't keep coming in and causing a scene. It's bad for business. It won't happen again, Kate said. It'd better not, Murray growled. Your ass is on the line here. Come on, guys, Evans interrupted. His cheeks were flushed slightly, as though he was hot under the collar or suffering from a hangover. Let's be a little lenient here. She got a bloody scar on her head. I think she's learned a lesson. Perhaps, Hawking said. But all the same, the company has to take a stand in situations like this. I'm giving you a verbal warning. You're second, if you're keeping track. Next up is a written warning. Let's hope we don't need to take things that far. What's after a written warning? Kate asked. She had a bad feeling that she was going to find out one way or another. But Hawking didn't say anything. She just drew a hand across her throat in that classic gesture that crosses the language barrier. Kate sighed and said, it won't happen again.
That was the latest part of Insomniac by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Twangling Jack Ford with Under the Cloak.
There's a buffet at the food bank to celebrate its opening in town. And we're all in need of something, but there's not enough to go round. I've got so many words in my head, if only I could find a good tune. And today I read that someone had said the tunes speak too soon. So look under the cloak, hiding from the light. Ignorance and want are hiding away in plain sight. And we all live in the kitchen. It's the easiest room to heat, but it serves to remind us we don't have enough to eat. The plague has left us weary, the smell of weed hangs in the air, and the drunks on the corner are showing me how not to care. And look under the cloak, hiding from the light. Ignorance and want are hiding away in plain sight. There's better jobs if we want them. We just have to go out and look, and we'd never go hungry if only we'd learned how to cook. They don't know what they're doing. It seems they don't have a clue. And there's no point looking for answers when nothing they tell us is ever true. So look under the cloak, hiding from the light. Ignorance and want are hiding away in plain sight. 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 time of day now. Though they look great now. Singing, hold on, I'm coming. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Spotlight, the wheels are bigger now. That wicked, bigger now. Singing Mustangs out there. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Spotlight, the boat is ready now. Singing fine, 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 fine. Singing fine, 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 fine. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Woo! Spotlight on James Brown now. He's the king of them all, y'all. He's the king of them all, y'all. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Do you like good music? That sweet soul music. The long as it's swinging. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Woo!
That was Sweet Soul Music by Straight 8, and before that we had Under the Cloak by Twangling Jack Ford. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined now in conversation by this week's guest, who is author and musician, Pae Veo.
The first question is a question I ask everybody. I think you'll have a pretty good answer to this. It's what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Yeah, the last book that I read, well, I'm always reading, have a couple on the go, as I've been mainly, haven't read much fiction as of recently, but the last one that I've finished that wasn't a reread would be Abyssal Arrows by which is a collection of essays put out by Philosophy Portal. A lot of the authors there, such as Daniel Gardner, is one of the contributors, Cadell Last and whatnot. So it's a collection of essays that focuses around Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Yeah, no, I loved it. It was one of the better collections of essays I've read in a very long time. But it's not the first collection of essays by Philosophy Portal that I've read, but out of all the ones that I have read, that's probably my favorite thus far.
Cool. Brilliant. And, we're going to chat some more about reading later on, but one thing in particular I want to talk to you about is your writing. So how long have you been writing and where did you get your start?
Oh boy. Well, I guess this is sure a common answer amongst authors usually is like since I can remember I've been writing. I do remember one of the first books that really got me to take it more seriously. I was 13, I believe, and I had read Goethe's The Sorrows of Young Werther. And I think that was the book that really kind of made me push me in the direction of actually doing something more than just having it as a hobby. So yeah, I guess that if I had to pin it down, it probably would have been around that time.
Cool. And what are you working on at the moment?
I'm currently editing a novel I'd written a few years back, and so I'm editing that. It's just a little science fiction novel. It's the first science fiction novel that have written. So and quite possibly the only one I ever will. I kind of had a decent idea, I thought, for it, and I shouldn't say it's the only one I ever will. If I get another idea like that again, I will. But
I was having a little look around at some of the work you've done, and I was reading about Searching for Marilyn Monroe. Can you tell us what that is and what are some of the life lessons in it?
Yeah, that's a short collection of parables and short stories that I had written over a period of about 10 years. And I just kind of threw them together uh, due to well, mainly just to really get something out there. It wasn't
Yep.
something I really expected to put out there. Kind of just happened over the span of a drunken weekend, really, that I I threw together, put out, and then that's kind of how that came about. I never really went back to it since then. But it's out there now. People seem to like it. So I kept it, but it yeah, kind of came about by accident, I guess. But it was a first. It wasn't the first thing I had published, but the first thing with only my name on it. And I
Yeah.
guess it was just something for whatever reason felt like I had to do. Um, I would definitely make a lot of changes to it now if I were to, but that's the way a first publication typically goes. It's
Yeah.
very few people look back fondly on their first publication.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. Well, and what are some of those lessons you've learned along the way and some of those changes that you would make?
The edits more carefully after it gets back from an editor because there
Hmm.
were quite a few errors that you catch. And they're certain things, cliches or whatnot, you might call that I would either reword or just write differently. I guess you just mature as you go in your writing style, and that was probably my biggest problem with it. Is it's to me it just sounds very amateur, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's funny because I'll typically like that in other people's work, but in
Yeah.
my own, you look at it a bit differently,
Yeah.
I
Well, and there's
guess.
the saying, isn't it, that we're our own harshest critics.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely true. Probably more
Cool.
so for the author than anyone else because it is so much in our conscious understanding of what we're trying to do, and it's not simply a quick visual expression of an artistic endeavor, but quite a bit
Yeah.
more embedded in our growth and understanding of life in general.
Yep. Yep, for sure. And you mentioned this a little bit, but what's some of the feedback you've had about your work?
Uh, I've been generally positive. What's funny about searching for Marilyn Monroe is what I got it reviewed for this magazine. Oh, I can't even remember the name of the magazine, but what I always found kind of funny is the one criticism they had was due to a story titled 53, which I can't remember what they said. There, something that it was predictable or it was one that they just didn't really like in the collection. But as far as the feedback I've gotten from the collection by everyone that's read it, that is every single one of the everyone's that I've responded. So in getting feedback, it's you got to take it all with a grain of salt, even the
Mm,
positive and the negative. It's such a mix that
yeah.
what you just never know what it's all going to be based on people's experiences with what they've read, where they're coming from, and so yeah, it's hard to analyze any kind of feedback in any kind of accuracy that can be applied to what one may want to write later on.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with author and musician Pae Veo, and this is So Long Space Girl with Gifted Kids.
If this is a nightmare, then wake me
scared. I wanted to be there. I would scream, but I can't. I am the mayor of the ghost town that I have rebuilt. I was a fool when I thought that I wanted this. This castle that I built is now a prison, and I become the one that's trapped inside. We tried to make our way, we just got left behind. You tried to make my day, I said at least you tried. I had to let you go instead of wondering. I ruined this just like I ruin everything. You don't have to go down with this ship that I'm on. So get to the lifeboats and cast off while you can. We are the captains of our own journeys over the edge. We are the masters of our passion as it falls off a cliff. These are the years where we're supposed to make something of ourselves, but it's no good, we've been running to the ground. We tried to make our way, we just got left behind. You tried to make my day, I said at least you tried. I had to let you go instead of wondering. I ruined this just like I ruin everything. Too high? Is it way too low? Does it even matter at all? We tried to make our way, we just got left behind. You tried to make my day, I said at least you tried. I had to let you go instead of wondering. I ruined this just like I ruin everything. We tried to make our way, we just got left behind. You tried to make my day, I said at least you tried. I have to let you go instead of wondering. I ruined this just like I ruin everything. We tried to make our way, we just got left behind. You tried to make my day, I said at least you tried. I have to let you go instead of wondering. I ruined this just like I ruin everything. I ruin everything. I ruin everything.
That was Gifted Kids by So Long Space Girl. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for me to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is author Pae Veo.
Now, who are some of your biggest literary influences? And I appreciate that's probably going to be quite wide-ranging, especially with, you know, everything from the philosophy to you know, searching for Marilyn Monroe to the sci-fi you mentioned. But who would you say are maybe your, you know, your top five?
Yeah, definitely. Well, what the authors that typically influence my fiction more than anything else are philosophers. It would be primarily the 21st century post-war existentialists, of course. I think who also have written quite a bit of fiction. I mean, you take Sartre, or I know you're a fan of Camus, and so
Yeah.
who my recent work, Peril and Decline, was pretty much me just writing a Camus-like novel. That's who
Yeah.
I was trying to emulate when I wrote that. Very short sentences, but these Hemingway-like sentences with spurts of poetry here and there. Of course, oh well, of course, Kafka. Kafka, you know, can
Yeah.
never leave out. Kafka's always been my go-to guy whenever, even when I put down when I say I've taken a break from reading fiction, that doesn't count Kafka. Kafka's always going to be there. So I
Yeah.
definitely put him
Well, and
probably if I had to pick a number one.
yeah, yeah. Well, and he's one of the few writers as well who, there's the adjective based on his name with Kafkaesque. I guess you get Orwellian as well. But if there was one of those, with for yourself, related to your writing, what do you think it would denote if there was, an adjective based on your name?
Oh, well, I mean, depending on what it is I'm writing, I know Peril and Decline has been called Kafkaesque, which
Hmm.
is I think a compliment in my opinion. But uh, I that I don't know. It depends because the people typically define these terms very differently, I find as well. I mean,
Yeah,
what really does Kafkaesque even mean? Is that
yeah,
writing like Kafka, or is that just writing in this or is that just simply the existential fiction, which my work has often been described as existential fiction, which I guess is a thing. I'm always terrified of putting my work in a specific kind of box, because then even
yeah.
subconsciously I might be limiting myself into what I'm exploring or whatnot. But I would be okay with anyone describing it as Kafkaesque. I think since he has been such a major influence, it's going to seep through one way or another.
Yeah. Well, and I think also as well, a lot of those labels they kick in, they're retrospectively used, and I think that may be part of. Again, you were saying you don't want to limit yourself, you don't want to put yourself into a box. A lot of these labels kind of come about basically after the author's passed away, and then you can put their work in a box because there's nothing new being added to it. You've finally got that sort of status of this is their body of work.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because yeah, you really don't see those terms come about until there's uh, a period at the end of their career, you could say,
Yeah,
um, which yeah, of course makes sense. And there's always that cliche of becoming something after once the artist is no longer around, and
yeah.
that seems to happen quite frequently, and that could definitely be part of the reason, is you don't really know until it's
Yeah.
all done in a very Hegelian way.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Okay. Well, another thing I want to chat to you about is BookTube. And I wondered if you could define what BookTube is and let us know kind of how you got started with that and some of the content that you post.
Yeah, well, I was hosting a workshop at a university for a while. And then when I stopped doing that, I thought I'd just continue it online. I actually hadn't heard of BookTube or
Hmm.
AuthorTube or any of this when I first started doing it. It was quite a while later. And then I actually recently have stepped away from it for a bit, and it just seemed so far separate from what I was seeing happening on BookTube or
Hmm.
AuthorTube. That's not a criticism or a negative or positive about it. It's just I'm trying to adjust where it is I actually belong there, and that may have to do with the fact that I never intended to start a booktube or authortube channel. I was just thought, hey, I'll talk about fiction, even though it's not the main thing I read. I just thought, well, since this was what I was doing at the university, I might as well
Mm.
continue it here. But I don't know. I just started with Holly a small press. the Stygian Society. Also, we put out an anthology that highlights a lot of work because, well, like I said, I love the community. I think it's a great community, and I just I'm not sure where my personal place is in it, other than supporting a community that I can
Yeah.
see a lot of potential in. But outside of that, I do plan on coming back to my channel, but I'll probably be talking more philosophy, since that is primarily what I read. Um, and it is primarily what I write as well. However, what I primarily publish is fiction. So
Yeah.
I'm just constantly writing all these things that I don't really know what to do with half the time. I really just do it because I don't know what else to do.
You're a musician as well. So I wondered like what instruments you play.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up because as I like I said, since I stepped away from YouTube for a bit, I hadn't been keeping up. But recently, the musicians you showcase as they're typically more or from what I've seen, these local or independent artists, which is really great. But the instruments, yeah, I record and play my own music. I've tried to work in bands, and I've never been really able to, so I've just kind of learned how to play everything that I needed to make it
Yeah.
sound. So, and all string instruments. I uh I play from piano, guitar, bass, all the way to the banjo. I It's violin, just really anything with strings.
Yeah.
I can usually play.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because I wonder if there's something there in that, the author's typically thought of as quite a sort of a solitary creature. I know you're going to be working with an editor and a cover designer and things like that.
Mm.
Um, but when you're in a band, you have to work very closely as part of a team. When you're an author, you can be a bit more of a solitary creature. So I wonder if, there's something in that, in the way that you make music. It sounds like it's a very kind of author style way of making music.
Yeah, I never really connected the two like that, but I think that's especially for me. I think that's very accurate. I I've lived my whole adult life alone. I've never had roommates.
Hmm.
So I've just even with my writing, and I just don't leave my office. I have my office here, and then next room I have my studio, and I'll just go back and forth. Aspect of just yeah, I definitely work better isolated. And maybe that is because I'm used to it because of my study
Yeah.
and writing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think
Cool.
about that. I think that's an interesting observation.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to ask as well, when it comes to writing, writing music, um, are there like parallels and similarities between, say, writing fiction and writing music?
No, not for me, actually. I try not to do it because I like doing it. And again, like my writing, I don't really know what else to do. But I never really started recording until a couple years ago. And, and it was just kind of as a way to get away from studying. Like I said, reading
Mhm.
philosophy over and over all day, 16 hours a day, every now and then it gets a bit heavy. And so I try to do it as something just completely as a way of escaping that. And so it is a very, very different approach, especially when writing lyrics. Or so I try and do whenever I write something, it's got to be at that spot in that moment, and whatever I have, say within that day that I take away from my writing, that I have to do it in that time, and whatever time that is. At the end of the day, it's finished. I don't really try
Yeah.
to. I'll go back and edit it here and there, but that's it's a very, very different approach, just so I don't go completely insane doing the same
Yeah.
thing day in and day out.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Just a couple more questions just to finish up with. One of them that I'm quite curious about, what are some of the themes that you like to cover in your writing?
Oh, well, the last novel, The Peril and Decline, that is kind of a whole metaphor for the history of existential ideas and existential thought from Kierkegaard
Mhm.
to Sartre and Beauvoir. You could really put almost any novel under, say, call it existential thing. I mean, what does that really mean? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, I guess yeah, alienation is definitely a huge one. I don't mean to, but I look back on a lot of my work, and I've written a lot of novels at this point, and quite a few of them focus around just a single character,
Yeah.
and I don't know why that is. I guess that's just so the best way to get a certain emotion out, I guess maybe. So that's definitely a huge theme. Yeah, I'd say that, and I know that's a broad answer, but my writing is so broad that I it's hard to pinpoint exactly what in a sentence or two what that might be.
Okay, so just the last question to end on. It's sort of two in one, really. What have you got planned next, and where can people follow you to find out more?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm editing this science fiction novel at the moment. I'm gonna see what I can do with that once I'm done. I've been working on this essay to publish for Philosophy Portal. So those are the two main focuses right now. I've been working with getting this small press started up. So
Mhm.
we've been looking at manuscripts and what next to publish with that. So those are the three main things. I've been writing some scripts or whatnot that so when I do eventually make my return back to YouTube, I'll have enough content there I can start posting again. But yeah, those have been the main focuses for sure. I've been, yeah, I'm doing constantly doing stuff with music as we mentioned as well, but I don't know what, if ever, I'm going to do anything with that. But also, I guess we'll just see where that goes. But yeah, my channel on YouTube is changing it to my name. You can find me. Instagram is just Pae Veo. I think my Twitter, which I haven't been on in quite a while, is
Mm.
just my name. Really, if someone sees my name, that's me.
Yeah.
There's not too
Is
many Pae Veos around, so.
Big thank you to Pae Veo for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Burt Honor with Tower of Hate.
I'm trapped in this tower of hate. My mind's been locked away.
That was How by Jazz Dillon, and before that we had Bert Honor with Tower of Hate. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilkshed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
Ravel's Bolero, which is on an LP I bought from the Sue Ryder charity shop in High Wycombe for £1. The LP also has Debussy's La Mer. A bolero can exist fully formed, performed by a single stick on a single drum. It is for me the most emotionally charged of all the rhythms. It always pushes forward. One sequence demands another. It goes dum da 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 dum da 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 dum da 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 da. As a child I watched the black and white minstrels on black and white TV because that was what was on. I hated it though I was too young to be woke. No one could tell me what its purpose was, but there was often a moment when a line of men in blackface and white tuxedos would beat out a bolero as a prelude to something like Cole Porter's Night and Day, and I would get chills. When I got into rock I found boleros by Jeff Beck and ELP. Long pieces often seem to climax in a bolero, like Child in Time by Deep Purple. When I found myself playing, I would find that long jams would slowly become boleros. Ravel starts his bolero with a very simple but incredibly memorable melody. This melody develops through variations and is crisscrossed with snake-like arabesque counterpoint. It was written in 1928 and was influenced by jazz. Ravel mixed the conventional classical scales with more exotic modes. Each round is like a question, and the appearance of brass makes the question more urgent. But it continues not to resolve till the answer comes in the final descending cadence, leaving the listener satisfied and relieved, but perhaps a little sad that it's over. Ravel's Bolero was a hit single. It got played on Wonderful Radio 1. Ravel's Bolero was the music behind the ice dance that married art and sport, and united the nation to watch Torvill and Dane win an Olympic gold in 1984. Ravel's Bolero.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Pae Veo for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. You can reach out to me here at the studio as well, so you can drop me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to love you and leave you with one last tune. This is Grace Note with their cover of Somebody by Depeche Mode. I'll catch you next week.
I want somebody to share the rest of my life, share my innermost thoughts, know my intimate details, someone who'll stand by my side and give me support, and in return he'll get my support. He will listen to me when I want to speak about the world we live in and life in general. Though my views may be wrong, they may even be perverted, he'll hear me out and won't easily be converted to my way of thinking. In fact, he'll often disagree, but at the end of it all, he will understand me. I want somebody who cares for me passionately, with every thought and with every breath. Someone who'll help me see things in a different light. All the things I detest, I will almost like. I don't want to be tied to anyone's strings. I'm carefully trying to steer clear of those things. And when I must want somebody who will put their arms around me, kiss me tenderly. Things like this make me sick, but in a case like this, I'll get away with it. I want somebody